Welcome to the Bella Vista Gardening Program. I'm Geri Hoerner, and with me today is Ginny Vance. And Ginny is new on our committee for the garden show, and she's also a fellow Bella Vista Garden Club member, and she is also a fellow Benton County Master Gardener. So she's going to do it all, just like all of us. So anyway, today we're going to be talking about container gardening. And we're on site here. We're not in the studio this time. We're on site at my garden shed. And we're going to be talking about container gardening and how to plant a pot. And we'll also be talking about upcoming events and what to do in your garden in May. So the upcoming events we have is Ginny has really been working hard with the Bella Vista Garden Club, and they're going to hold their second spring sale on May 20th through the 22nd. And you've been working over there, did you?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
And you had the first sale, and now the second sale is coming up.
Yep.
May 20th through the 22nd. So it's going to be the same as before. You would have to sign up online and through the website, right?
Through the website, yep.
Okay. And they'll give you a time to show up, and they're going to use social distancing, I guess.
Yes, we are. We're going to be taking appointments for both Thursday and Friday in the morning, and then an open session on Saturday. So Saturday we don't need appointments.
Oh, Saturday
So,
you don't.
yeah.
Okay, that's great. Well, the appointment thing has really been going well. So, and then the Benton County Master Gardeners is having their 8th plant sale and expo. That's going to be held Friday the 14th of May. From, let's see, Friday is going to be from 12 to 6, and Saturday, the 15th, is going to be from 8 to 1. And that's at the First United Methodist Church in downtown Bentonville, where they usually have it before. And there's going to be native plants, perennials, herbs, annuals, trees, shrubs, all kinds of things from the Master Gardeners. So both of these sales are great ways for you to get native plants and beautiful plants at a low cost.
Yep.
And both of them also support their scholarship programs. Both of the clubs have scholarship programs, and they both support that. So it's really a great way to get plants and support the scholarship. So today we're talking about container gardening. And you've got a lot of containers.
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do. And one of them is right here on the ground here. She uses a lot of colorful pots. And what do you look for when your annuals, when you put them in there?
I usually
Color?
Yeah, I'm a red, yellow, blue, purple color. I like colorful plants in my sun garden. You know, I think you've got.
I have a shade garden, and she has a sun
I've got
garden.
a sun garden, so I always look for colored plants in the specific colors to kind of match the pots.
Yeah, and I go more with pastels, so I'm a pastel person. So anyway, the first thing you have to think about is your container. Now there's a lot of containers. This is a ceramic container. There's terracotta, there's plastic, and your terracotta will be more porous, and you'll have to water more often. Excuse me. And the plastic and the ceramic will hold the water better. And then you got to have drainage. Make sure you have a drainage hole. If the pot doesn't have a drainage hole, you'll have to put another pot inside, water it, and then put it back in the outside pot, because it has to have drainage, otherwise the roots will be sitting in water. The terracotta pots, now I don't know if you know this, but the terracotta pots from Italy will last a lot longer than any other terracotta pot.
Oh, I didn't know that.
If they're made in Italy. I have some here that are about 35 years old. If you take them in the winter, they'll last for a long, long time. And I've had other pots that I've had for 3 years, and they start disintegrating. So they cost a little more, but they're worth it in the long run. So kind of look for pots made in terracotta pots made in Italy. And then you had a suggestion too, with a big pot. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You don't have to use foil in this. can be filled with fillers.
Mm-hmm.
You have one of these that kind of takes some of the space, although the soil may go in there. Or you can use like empty water bottles, plastic water bottles. You can use peanuts, the packing peanuts, but you have to test those peanuts first because some of the peanuts dissolve in water. Some of them do, some of them don't. So just test it, but you don't have to use all soil,
all the way down.
Soil. So, and it's expensive, and it's getting more expensive. So that's for big pots. And then the next thing you have to decide on your pot, the soil is the important thing. There's a lot of potting soils out there. Some of them have a lot of peat moss in them, and that's not a good thing because the peat moss, it's hard to get it wet, and when it dries out, it's hard to get it wet again. So peat moss is not your friend in these, but get a good potting soil mix. There's a lot of makers, manufacturers. Some of them have fertilizer added to them already, and just kind of make sure you get a good quality potting soil. I use my potting soil over again. A lot of people just dump all their soil out at the end of the year and then start over fresh. But
you don't have to.
I've reused my potting soil for several years, and you can tell when your plants are thriving and when they're not thriving. And when they're not thriving, then maybe it's time to renew the soil the next year. Also, I use Polymer Crystals. These will hold water. If this little crystal gets in water, it'll be about this big. And be sure not to use too much, because I did use too much one year. And it rained for about 3 days, and I looked out, and my pot was like, the soil was mounded up like this, and it looked like it had pieces of Jell-O in there. And that was the polymers had swelled up so much that it just lifted the soil. So use what the package says.
Yes.
It's usually about one teaspoon for 5 cups of soil. So kind of visualize your 5 cups of soil and use 1 teaspoon and sprinkle it in like the first 4 inches of soil, because that's where your roots are.
That's where your roots are at. Yep.
So anyway, the soil's next. Then amendments. You can use a slow release fertilizer. Most of the soil you buy, the potting soil, don't get garden soil, get potting soil. It has, sometimes it has the fertilizer in there. It's a
slow release.
And you see them in the package. You see these. There's a lot of brands of this. Osmocote probably is the most popular, but there's other brands you can buy at the box stores or at the nurseries. But they do, this says it goes for 6 months. Now, annuals are heavy feeders. Now, how often do you feed your plants?
Every 7 days.
You feed them
every 7
weekly.
days. Weekly, yeah.
But
And only the annuals and only in the pots.
Okay. But do you use the feed?
No, I don't. I actually when I first, depending on the soil that I get, some of the soil, like you said, has the slow release amendments in it, and it says like 3 months usually, but I still fertilize them because here again, your annuals in the pots, because when you're watering them, it's going through the bottom to your pot, so you need to fertilize every week.
That water just
it washes out, so it's important that you fertilize, and that's how you get your blooms to stay. Because if you don't fertilize, your blooms are not going to stay.
No. So you do need to do fertilizer, and then the plants themselves, that's strictly up to you, because you want to use plants that have similar watering requirements. So you wouldn't want to put something like a petunia in with a succulent, because the succulent doesn't need much water, and by the time you water over and over, you're going to kill your succulent. So be sure that the most of the annuals take about the same amount of water on the annuals. So
and make sure you get annuals. If this is going to be a sun pot, because the annuals, this pot's going to need to be in the sun, because it's a petunia, it requires full sun, 6 hours full sun. So make sure when you put your plants together, it's full sun and not shade.
Or if you have a shade garden, put it in the shade. Now, it used to be that just people did container gardening, like for their front porch or their patio. Maybe they just had a small patio. But now people are putting pots everywhere.
Putting pots everywhere.
And even if you have a big garden like I do, I have pots everywhere with flowers just to add that punch of color for annuals. So perennials bloom for a short time, and the annuals usually bloom all summer. So we do it for color. Then the new style now is what they call thriller, filler, and spiller. So what they're saying now is you have one plant that's tall and kind of focal point, and that's called a thriller. Then you have another plant that's more clustered closer to the pot, and that's a filler. And then you have spillers that spill over the pot, and that kind of softens your pot. It kind of softens the lines of the pot. So that's one of the techniques now. Another one is just to put one type of plant in the pot and just let it be a huge focal point of that plant. And I do a combination of this one. I have 3 sizes of this pot. I have a small, medium, and large. And the medium, I'll put a couple different plants in that kind of coordinate with the large one. And the small one, I just do one plant that I repeat in one of these pots and just have it as the one statement. Because the small pot's not very big, and you can't put 3 different type of plants in that little pot. So it depends on your pot, and it depends on what you want it to look like.
Yep.
So we'll do this one. This is going to be on my patio, and it's in the sun mostly. It's at least 6 hours of sun, and the little ornamentation. You can get these little ornaments. This kind of glows in the dark. They have little lights you can put in. They have little, there's little metal accents you can put in your pots. And then this one's going to be like the filler. Now, what I haven't done this year is I haven't put the fertilizer in. So I would have to add some fertilizer to the top of that one.
Another thing that you like to do, especially if you're reusing, get your roots out. Yeah, so get your roots out if you can, and making sure whatever plant was in there before, get the root structure, because it'll impact your new plant.
But some of the small roots in there, they'll act like compost, so they will dissolve, and create some food for the plants. Okay, and then also I use pine bark mulch on top of the plants when I finish planting. And there's some of this pine bark mulch left over from last year, and I just work it into the soil because that just kind of makes your soil more pliable and gets more air. So this one will go probably about here.
Yep. And something I do with my containers that are potted like this, go around your pot to get it loose, because a lot of times your plants are root bound, and so you need to be able to open it, and you need to be real careful with your plants, because a lot of times what happens is your root will just fall apart. Now this one's really good.
Now if these roots are all in a circle here, that means it's been in the pot for a while, and you would want to kind of loosen those up so they don't keep going in a circle. These look pretty good, so we'll just put that in the front.
Yep.
Is that the right way?
Yep.
Let's go in that way. Now, this is what I found in my pot. When I plant a pot, I usually take the stickers from the plant and stick it down in the pot so that I know what I planted. And if it did well, then I know next year I want to get this plant again. If it didn't do so good, then I kind of just pitch it. But this was from last year. I had a white linen Catalina in there. So that was a little different. And you want to have about 1 inch or 2 inches from the top of your pot to the soil line, because you got to have room for water. If the soil's up to the top and you water it, it'll just run over. So you got to have some room there, and just maneuver it till you get it where you want it. Get the soil around it. Now the other thing, my thriller, since this one's going to be against my railing, I'm going to be putting this in the back. My thriller will be in the back of the pot. And what you'll see here, this is a spike, and there's actually 2 in here. There's 2 plants in here. So I'm going to actually divide these plants. And I'm going to use the other one in another pot. Because 2 of these would be...
They get very big. These spikes root. Yes, they're very big spikes.
So just very gently, get your... You might have to take all the soil off, and it's not going to hurt anything. But just gently maneuver them apart, and you have 2 plants instead of 1. Your 6-packs, are usually just 1 plant per. But sometimes you get lucky. You get 1 or 2. They overseed them or something.
They do, yeah. But the spikes, they grow in the root structure.
The spike will be about this tall.
Yeah.
So.
And the root structure of the spikes are really deep,
will go
all the way down. Yeah.
Yeah. They are very, very easy to grow.
You need some scissors?
No, I think I've got it.
You got it?
I just want to tickle them apart and try not to break any of the roots, but they like to stick together. These
they
must
do.
Be brothers.
They must be.
Leave, twins. They don't want to leave each other. So,
there you go.
Okay. And we'll just stick that in a pot of soil until I plant it in another pot. So here we have it. And see, that's a pretty good root structure already. So you're going to dig down and put it in the back of the pot. Hopefully the fan will be this way. Okay. Now I didn't add any water crystals to this pot because I had put them in before. There's from last year. And I'm afraid if I put too many in there, I'll have that same situation where they're going to bubble up. So,
and there is some I was going to say there is some potting soil too that has moisture control in it that already has.
Yeah, sometimes they
has it in it. So be sure and watch your soil, because there is soil that you can buy that's moisture control, and that already has the crystals in it. So
this is potting soil here that you don't need to add it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll just use my hand.
You got it?
This is a tool I use mostly is my hand.
I was going to say there's this one here too. We need to get some more.
This pot, I'm going to repeat some of these plantings. This is Dusty Miller, and this will get about so tall, and it's a nice accent because it's white. It'll catch the evening soil, or the evening sun. And it looks good at night.
Is it coming out for you?
Yeah, they kind of stick together too. Okay, so let's put this on one side. I'm trying to visualize where my pot's going to be, so I think I want it on this side. Just dig down and then get it secured in there. Now the problem with some of the annuals is they start selling them way too early, and you buy them and then you have to keep bringing them in, and by the time you get to plant them, they're very root bound.
Very root bound.
Yeah. So you almost, if you're going to keep them for a length of time, you may want to take them out of the 6-pack and put them in a little larger pot until you get them in your other big pots, because they start selling these in March. It's way too early. Okay. So the other thing I'm going to use this one in my little pot as just a big plant of one size.
You want me to get that pot?
No, I think I'll just
take one of
later. But I'm going to just take one of these out.
Here, got it?
To
split it?
Yeah, I'm going to split it.
Here.
Okay, and then I think I'll use one of these with the 6-pack in here. It's a pretty purple. I love pink and purple.
Here you go.
Okay.
I'm going to put this back in here with the spike real quick.
Okay. And see, these are small plants, but by the time they start growing, this pot's going to be really filled out quite well. Pretty sure that's going to be a good in there. And then I'm going to, that's considered a filler. And then I'm going to put the purpley, solid purple, blue purple. What you might have to do sometimes is cut these up.
You know what? One thing that we found, there's holes on the bottom.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you can take a pin and get those up if you can't get them out. Let me see. You don't have a pin here.
Okay. And I got a scissors.
You got a pair of scissors, yeah.
Because you don't want to damage your, sometimes they just pop right out and sometimes
Oops.
they don't.
Got it?
Well, this is like,
There it goes.
just split it open. And you can see these roots are going all the way down.
Yeah, they're real connected.
They are connected. There's a good root system already. So these are going to root quite well. So I'm going to put one here.
You want another one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this will really fill out the
Let me get
pot.
that.
And again, get it to your soil line.
It's not. Gotta get it. I want to get as much root as possible. You don't want to lose your root structure with these little small plants, otherwise. And it's got moisture on it too. We want to get as much as we can.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
There we go. So that's going to be a great little structure plant too. So, and just
There's
press
some
them
more
down,
soil if
squish
we
them
need.
too much because you don't want to bruise the roots, but you do want to get them in there firmly so there's no air holes. Then when you water the plant, the air holes should, subside. So you keep watering until it runs through. Now, I could have put another spiller over here, but I'm afraid that's going to be a little too much when when they really fill in. So I think I just have the one spiller and then the fillers, and
this actually gets longer and it'll spill too.
yeah, it kind of
Then this will get tall, so this will look really pretty.
It'll be pretty full by the time we get done. Then you want to water really well, and till it runs through. Water runs through. Always water your plants till they run through. The water goes through.
Now this is a petunia, and
It's kind of a cascade.
cascading one, but did you want to talk about how you maintain that and how you prune that?
This is called Pink Sky, and it gets 10 to 16 inches, so it's going to get pretty big. And once it blooms, you're going to have to deadhead petunias usually. There's a few petunias you don't have to deadhead, but once the bloom fades, you want to break it off, and you want to break it off below. There's one that's. You want to break it off below these green parts right here. If you just take the bloom out, it's going to start going to seed, and it's not going to bloom much. So while you want it to bloom, you want to go below that bloom and take off the stem that bloom is attached to. So.
And these other flowers that are in here, the verbena, these are self-seeding, and then the is it the lobella?
Yeah, that's the lobelia.
Lobelia, yep. I believe you don't need to deadhead those. Those come back in full. It'll be real pretty in this.
They call self-cleaning.
Yeah, they're self-cleaning. So.
Okay, so then we've got, your thriller, and your filler, and your spiller. So that plant, in a couple weeks, it'll look pretty good.
Look very nice.
So, a couple weeks, it'll look good. Gardeners have to be patient. That's one thing we have to be, is patient.
No, this will fill out within a week. Like I said, once this comes out, once the sun gets to this petunia, these are looking really very good.
Yeah, they're going to be nice. So, and then again, I'm going to save my I'm going to save this little ticket and I'll put it way down in there so nobody can see it, but I have it for next year in case I want to do this again. I always save all of my tags for my annuals, and I just stack them up on my shelf back there, and then I can kind of keep track of what I bought and how it did, and you know, for next year. So it gives you good information.
Now, a lot of people pot perennials, and Geri has potted a lot of her hostas in containers as well too. So you can intermingle your annuals with your perennials depending on what it is.
Right. And next year, all you have to do is redo your annuals in the pot. And your perennials already.
Your perennials are in there.
I've got some hostas in pots I've had in pots for 10 years. Sometimes you have to take them out and divide them a little bit, and separate them, but they do real well. And then after I got these all planted, I'm going to put pine bark mulch on top. You can use pine bark mulch, you can use cedar mulch, you can use leaf mold. Tony uses like composted leaves.
Oh, does he?
On his pots.
With compost?
And it's like a compost.
Yep.
You know, feeds the plant too.
There's something new that I had read in the container gardens that a lot of people are using in their containers, mealworm. Or worm casings, I should say, not mealworms, but worm casings.
Oh, yeah.
The worm casings.
That's a good natural fertilizer.
Natural fertilizer, and like you said, when you start seeing your different plants, depending on what your container, especially your bigger ones, if your fertilizer doesn't seem to be working and they're looking a little pale, there's different amendments that you should use. Oh gosh.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. The plants in my hairs. But anyway, this is going to be very pretty.
Yeah. And then when we get the three together, it'll be a little trio. And like I said, you know, you have to just decide what the look you want, and then go to the nursery and see what's going to, you know, be happy in your garden.
Yep.
Okay. So the things we have to do in our garden now this month. So May is the time you want to finish doing your plantings. It's been so cold this winter, and we've had so much winter kill, and people are so anxious to get out there and cut off dead parts of plants, and you have to give them time. Janet Carson she used to be in charge of the Master Gardener, she said, wait maybe until June before you really determine a plant has died and you need to really trim it or get rid of it. I've got a rose here on the shed that it looks pretty bad. It looks pretty dead. It's coming up at the bottom, but it's a rose that survived Katrina, so it's a tough rose. But the top part, I'm just waiting to see if anything's going to come out. Nothing so far. And I have the same rose in back on a trellis out in the open, and it survived better. It has green about this high up, and this one has green about this high up. So there's no rhyme or reason.
No, and the azaleas, they're crusty up at the top, but everything's looking now green with the rain over the weekend. Yeah. The azaleas, the crepe myrtles, just give them time.
Give them time.
Give them time to come back.
And some of your older plants that aren't used to this terrible cold winter that we had, that was the worst winter in 40 years maybe. It's the worst winter I've ever seen here. So some of the older ones just may not make it because they're just older, you know, and they just aren't used to that. Younger plants may survive better.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, now that it's getting warmer and it's 50 degrees at night or more, you can plant your herbs. You can plant basil. Basil does not like to be outside under 50 degrees. So make sure it's 50 at night. And then you can also make an herb pot, you know. And bulbs, be sure to leave your leaves on your daffodils and your bulbs for 6 to 8 weeks. That feeds that bulb for next year, and you'll get a bloom. Otherwise, if you cut them off, it won't bloom next year. So then perennials. You're dividing your perennials now?
Yep. Yep.
So dividing them for the plant sale.
Yep. Yep.
And if you have perennials that are just getting too big, you can move part of them to another part of your garden. So you can do that, or you can share them with your neighbors. Which
Yes. Yes.
And then the lawns, they're all greening up now. And be sure to keep them about 2 inches high at least. And you don't want to cut no more than 1/3 of at a time, so don't let it get too long. This lawn has to be trimmed today, or mowed today. And the fertilizers, the fescue, use nitrogen only if you need to. You know, maybe do a soil test of your lawns and check that. So roses, once they start flowering out, look for your aphids or for what is black spot we get.
Yep.
So
Yep.
just look for that.
I just ordered some copper fungicide for some of my roses are looking a little weak, so I got some copper fungicide I ordered. So
Okay. And you can give them a shot of compost tea.
compost tea.
Compost
Yeah.
tea is wonderful. And the azaleas, once they bloom, the rhododendrons and sedilea, once they bloom, then you can fertilize.
Right.
So don't fertilize your azaleas and rhododendrons until after they bloom. And you want to deadhead your lilacs. I got lilacs blooming there. Got to deadhead those when they fade. Vegetables, it's time to plant vegetables.
Yep. Tomatoes.
I don't do vegetables.
I do vegetables in 5-gallon buckets.
And you can do them in the ground, you can do them in buckets, you know, it's any way you want to grow them.
Yeah.
And as long as they grow.
As long as they grow. I do tomatoes and peppers, and they do very, very well in the 5-gallon. I did last year, but they just did not do well in the 5-gallon bucket. But the tomatoes did wonderful, and so did the peppers. So.
Yep. And then just be sure you have it mulched, you know, and you keep the weeds down. So
Yep.
that's about it for what to do in May. Still cleaning up a little bit. I'm still cleaning up a little bit. The weeds have been terrible this year. Abundance of weeds. Maybe we should just grow weeds.
Yeah, no kidding.
And
Those,
they'll
yeah,
just
the
flourish.
native plants.
Call them a native
the
plant.
native plant.
Okay, for more information, you can go to the Bella Vista gardenclub.com website. There's a lot of information there. We're having one more meeting this year. It's going to be at Reardon.
On the 28th,
28th.
this next Wednesday, April 28th.
Wednesday. And I'm not sure what the program is going to be. We had to switch some of our programs around with Zoom and so forth. So, but we always have an interesting program, and Tony Lacazzi is usually giving our horticulture sessions, which you always learn a lot. And then the Benton County Master Gardeners have a website also that's got a lot of information. So, but thank you, Ginny, for joining me
You're
today.
welcome. It was enjoyable. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll have a lot of pots out there with a lot of color, and enjoy them all summer.
We sure will.
These will probably bloom till frost, so it's a long-term reward.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then until next month, don't forget to stop and smell the roses.